When I was at the University of Dallas, they produced a T-shirt for the basketball team, and it said, was it Crusaders? What were we? Crusaders? Crusaders. 0-86, because they had lost 86 games in a row. But we were about education there. We weren't worried about sports as much, and it showed. When we were talking about what I might talk about here, one of the thoughts was to just talk a little bit about the USCCB, the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops, its committee structures, and what it means when we talk about this bishop or that bishop serves on XYZ committee. Bishop Coakley, Archbishop Coakley has been and is now still, are you chairing or you're still chairing numbers of committees? And so I'll just share a few comments about that, and then we'll just open it up for questions, which are always much more interesting than what the speaker has to say. In some ways, the idea of the United States Conference and its committee structure is similar to the relationship that parishes have with the Chancery, in the sense that there are many things that dioceses do that impact and are benefits to parishes that parishes would have a hard time doing on their own. One easy example is the seminarians, the vocation office of a diocese. The seminarians come from the parishes, but parishes themselves would have a hard time funding very many seminarians, and so the whole diocese benefits from the fact that there's a vocation office, so everyone works together to staff and have the vocation office. So the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops is a working group, in a sense, a collaborative structure for the bishops in the country to be able to work together, to be able to collaborate together in the ministry of the church within the country. And we do that through a lot of different committees that serve within the conference. So there are 18 committees in the conference currently, everything from canonical affairs to Catholic education to domestic justice and human development to international justice and peace to pro-life committee to the religious liberty committee, all kinds of different committees. There are 17 subcommittees. Peter said that I was the chair of one of the subcommittees. So I work on the committee for laity, marriage, family life, and youth, which we call the Limfly Committee. Not McFly, but Limfly Committee. And I'm the chair of the subcommittee under the Limfly Committee on the promotion and defense of marriage. And I always want to call it the Defense of Marriage and the Dark Arts Committee. That's what always goes through my mind when I hear the name of our committee, because it reminds me of that. You know, in Harry Potter, there's a class in the dark arts, the defense of the dark arts. So I noticed that all the married people that I know appreciate dark humor, and so I thought there was some kind of connection there. I'm not sure why that is about married people, but there's something there. So the Limfly and the Dom committees, Dom, get it? Defense of Marriage, Dom. The Limfly and the Dom committees focus on the mission of Jesus Christ in the world, particularly as it pertains to the laity and discipleship is one of them. If we say that Jesus is Lord, what does it mean to say Jesus is Lord? For any one of us who believes that Jesus is Lord, what does that mean when we're at work? What does it mean when we're here in the Petroleum Club for lunch? What does it mean when we're in our schools or at the park or at the Walmart or wherever? An example, over the last years, we saw statues of Junipero Serra in California being torn down. Or in the last little while, the Supreme Court ruled on a ruling where the Catholic Charities in Philadelphia had their adoption program shut down by the city because the Catholic Charities insisted that children in the foster program could only be adopted by husband and wives. So what does that do to a Catholic's freedom to live our faith that Jesus is Lord in the public square when we find that there are entities that oppose the living of that faith in the public square? So laity and discipleship is one of the points of the Limb-Fly Committee. Married couples is perhaps the main point of the Limb-Fly Committee. What can we do to assist married couples in living out their vocation? Marriage is a sacrament of sign of Christ in the world. Married couples are, in that sense, co-pastors of their own domestic church, which means you could take up a collection at home if you wanted to. Did you know that? You'd probably just get lint. I don't know if you wouldn't get much. The challenges to living the married life faithfully and successfully change with place and time. The culture, the economy, family systems, catechesis, education, these are all things that both contribute to marriage and in some ways get in the way of faithful and successful marriage. When the Supreme Court ruled on the case Obergefell versus Hodges, that said that same-sex couples had the same rights to marriage and its conditions as opposite-sex couples, that was when the Promotion and Defense of Marriage in the Dark Arts Committee subcommittee was formed, because we recognized that the state in various ways was increasingly working against marriage and the church, and so we wanted to find ways to support couples in their marriage. Two of the things that we've recognized is that the formation from the culture could cause greater confusion regarding what marriage is and what marriage is not, and the state could become more aggressive in its work against the married couples. The other part of the Limb-Fly Committee is family life, so looking for ways to support folks in living family life. And in youth, we collaborate with other entities in the country that focus on youth ministry and working with youth. So that gives you a little snapshot into the working of the USCCB through a couple of the committees. When we have our meetings, our U.S. conference meetings, in some ways they're sort of like this gathering. A primary purpose of the meeting is for bishops who don't get to see each other that often to be able to see each other and network and talk together and visit with one another about how things are going in your part of the country and other parts of the country, working out issues together. We listen and hear reports from the various committees on the work that's going on of the conference. And so we enjoy those meetings. They've been virtual since the pandemic started. We haven't had another in-person meeting yet. We're looking for November to be our first in-person meeting back together. One of the highlights of the meeting is that on the second full afternoon, at the afternoon break, there's Dove bars. And so we miss having Dove bars. When we're on Zoom, we don't get to have Dove bars. So our lives are very simple. Some resources that I would recommend for you. On the web, you can find our Marriage Unique for a Reason website. So Marriage Unique for a Reason is the title and the address. The committee produces a podcast called Made for Love. So you can look for the Made for Love podcast on the USCCB site. And we also are highly encouraging people to learn about and to spend time looking at the Person and Identity Project website. So the Catholic Women's Forum has put together a website called the Person and Identity Project, which corrals together resources and teaching and important information regarding gender ideology and the current transgender movement and all these kinds of things which are coming at us. So those are some excellent resources that you can find on the USCCB site or on their own websites. Okay. Peter said that there's some kind of motu proprio that came out recently. I didn't hear about it, Bishops usually hear about those things. Yeah, so that's a good example, though, of a very informal kind of working together. The Holy Father issued a motu proprio regarding the Latin Mass and when and how and under what conditions it should be celebrated, and returning authority over the celebration of the Latin Mass to the bishops in their individual dioceses. I think a lot of us didn't know it was coming. I didn't know it was coming. I profess that I don't pay that close attention always. But so it was a little bit of a surprise to many. And, we live in this strange moment in technology and culture where we have all this media surrounding us. And so something that happens somewhere, there's a secondary thing, almost like a shadow of the thing, which is the reporting about the thing that suddenly explodes all over everything. And then what happens is a second shadow that forms, which is people's reaction to the false reporting about the thing that happened all over the place. And so what bishops often then get hit with is a lot of angst and anxiety about whatever the secondary reporting and all the mistaken understandings and so forth. And so I think it's become wise for all of us, I mean all of us, literally in our homes and in our businesses and everywhere, to always assume that first reporting on things is wrong, to never take first reporting as being correct, to wait and say, okay, that might be true, and so let me go see if I can research and figure out what's actually going on here. And then the bishops needed to react in their own dioceses because the Holy Father returned to the bishops authority over the celebration of the Latin Mass in their diocese. So as one example, I called a bishop who is also a canon lawyer who I know and spoke with him. We had an informal conversation over the phone and talked about what are some of the things that he was thinking as a canonist about the motu proprio. Most of the bishops have taken a very patient wait and see. Okay, let's slow down. The Holy Father has issued a motu proprio, but we need to apply it in our diocese, so let's first talk to people in the diocese and see what's going on. And then I think most of us are getting around now to issuing decrees, and the decrees more or less simply formalize and concretize what's already happening in the diocese. So as an example, in the Diocese of Tulsa, we have Clear Creek Monastery, which is a Benedictine monastery that from its founding is dedicated to the Latin liturgy. And we have one parish that is dedicated to the Latin Mass that is run by the FSSP Society, a society of priests dedicated to the Latin Mass. We have 2 regular parishes that have one Sunday Mass in Latin. So that's what we have, and so we've simply concretized that. Those parishes are all doing wonderful things. The monastery is a great blessing to the diocese, and so we've simply concretized all that where it is in response to the motu proprio. And now, when we have our meeting in November, there'll be a lot of, what did you do? And we'll be comparing notes about that, but it'll all have been done by then. But that's an example of how being able to work informally together. This afternoon, we're going to be in a Zoom meeting with the bishops of Region 10, which is Texas, Oklahoma, and Arkansas. And that meeting is dedicated towards a conversation regarding the upcoming Eucharistic Summit and the Eucharistic document that the conference is going to be producing, a teaching document. But I'm sure it will stray off into, what did you do about the motu proprio? And what's going on in your diocese, and comparing notes and that kind of thing. So yeah, it's very similar to what you do, I'm sure, in your business networks and all the rest. It's very similar. A new tax law comes out, oh, what do we do about this? After the cursing stops, then you start calling people. We curse in Latin, but otherwise it's the same. It's basically the same, more or less the same. Yeah.
One of the challenges facing the church now, one of many, is how we pass the faith on to the next generation.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm concerned about not high school and college kids, but also young adults. What do you see in your parish or in your committee work that has worked that's successful in keeping those young people engaged?
So his question has to do with a concern about how we pass on the faith to young people, both young adults, high school, but even younger than that. What do we see in our committee that is working, and how do we keep young people engaged? I recommend beatings, actually. We don't use those enough anymore. I'm just kidding. They're recording it. I'm just kidding. Oh, it's live? That's even better. That's even better. Because Coakley's going to get the call, not me. Who was that? But the question, of course, is a critical question. It's the question, right? It's always the question. How do we as parents and how do we as disciples of Jesus Christ pass on to others, of course our youth, but also all others, how do we pass on to others what we believe? And I think we often go from that question to programs, but that's probably where we kind of go a little off the rails. If you talk with your child, if you yourself are able to give your testimony, who is Jesus in your life? How did you come to meet Jesus in your life? How did you first experience that Jesus was active in your life, knew your name, was talking to you? If you can give that testimony to your children, talking to your young children about who Jesus is to you, how you came to know who Jesus is, how they might come to know who Jesus is, what they should look for, watch out for, teach them about him. It's always going to be those simple things, and also personal. It has to be personal. We need the programs that we have, and we use them, and they're wonderful for catechized people. They're probably less effective because if someone's sitting in a crowd of 50, like here, who doesn't have a reason to be interested in the question yet, then they're not going to listen to the answer. I didn't. Did you? I didn't. I didn't really come to understand who Jesus was in my own life till I was 23. I went to a Catholic school. I'm the second of 12 children. It was a Catholic family as far as I knew. I was an altar server, the whole thing. But until you're interested in the questions, the answers are less meaningful. And it was persons who got me interested in the questions, persons who put me in circumstances that allowed those questions to suddenly rear themselves up in front of me in a way that seemed new. Then the answer mattered. So that would be my answer is it's the slowest way to do it, but it's the only way to do it in a sense, is person to person. We have to be able to know our faith, and by that I don't mean the catechism per se. Yes, we need to also know the catechism, but you can carry it in your phone. You don't have to memorize it. When I say we need to know our faith, I mean we need to know who Jesus is in our life and why it matters. Why does Jesus matter to me? We can ask ourselves the question, would I die for Jesus? If I had to die for Jesus, would I die for Jesus? And if we say, yes, I would die for the Lord, then why? Why is he that important to us? And then what kind of language can we use to share that with whatever young people are in our life? You can write them cards, letters, there's texts and emails now, I guess. When you see them, speak to them, share with them your life of faith. So those are the ways I would answer the question. And if that doesn't work, then there's always the old-fashioned way. No, I'm just kidding. Yes, Michael?
What has been your biggest surprise, joy-filled surprise? There are other kinds of surprises, but the biggest joy-filled surprise in your time in Tulsa?
My biggest joy-filled surprise in my time in Tulsa. The Diocese of Tulsa has 77 parishes, spread from Idabel to Scheidler, from Miami. See, they taught me how to say it right. Miami. To Durant. They taught me how to say that too. The smallest parish that we have has a regular Mass congregation of about 6. And we've got several that have probably less than a dozen. And so it's been a great joy to me. I made a commitment early on that continues to be fruitful, that I would see every parish every year, that I would visit every parish at least once every year. Only about 40 of them have confirmation in any given year, because in very small places, there may not even be any kids. So I go no matter what. We get them on my calendar, and I go and celebrate Mass. The second time I went to the parish in Roland, if you've not been to Roland, you don't know what you're missing. The second time I went to Roland, they asked the pastor if I was coming to close the parish. Yeah, they have about 17 or so at Mass on Sunday. They assumed that, well, gosh, we're so small. He must be coming to close us. Why else would he be coming? I don't ever want a parish to think that. Why else would he be coming? So that's been a joy, is to, on the weekend, I'm out to 2 or 3 or so parishes. I don't have the difficulty that Archbishop Coakley has of my parish, furthest parish being 5.5 hours and 7 time zones away in the diocese. So it's somewhat easier for me to be able to do it. But that's a great joy, is to be able to just be in the parish, celebrate Mass on Sunday with the folks, and just be with them. That's a great joy. Plus, I'm driving all over. I love to drive around, and so it's fun to drive all over. Yes, sir.
Bishop, what kind of outreach do you have for gay Catholics and
For persons who have same-sex attraction, we have a courage and an encourage ministry. So if you don't know it, that's another resource you can look up. Courage is an apostolate of the Catholic Church. They have a website, couragerc.org, that helps persons who have a same-sex attraction or family members of persons who have a same-sex attraction to understand what is the life of chastity, what is friendship with God look like, what is the life of developing authentic friendships, so that they don't give in to the attraction that they have or understand themselves to be limited to only living out a same-sex attraction in a sexual relationship with other people. So those are our ways of outreach. The rest of it happens in the parishes. Pastors just individually working with people in their parish. Where?
Back to the USCCB, when you hopefully get back together in November, is there a chance you'll still do live streaming? I really enjoyed watching the sessions, and I think as part of that, the interchange that you all had about meeting in your diocesan synods to do the work on the new document was a fruit of that.
Sure. She's asking if when we start meeting again in person at the conference, will there continue to be live streaming? And I think even before the COVID, we always had, it's on our, EWTN, I think, carries it. That's right next to C-SPAN on the dial, I think. It's right up there somewhere. I'm just kidding. Yeah, dial. Did I say dial? Right next to the C-SPAN icon on the thing. But because we were before, I think we'll continue. I don't know that it'll be live streamed. That's a function of not being able to be together using that Zoom thing, technology and all. But I'm sure it'll still be on TV. TV, I guess it's on TV.
It'll be broadcast.
Broadcast, it'll be broadcast. Awesome. Thanks so much. I enjoyed being with you.